But if we don't get to them or you think of additional questions, could you please drop them in the chat? We will update our FAQs and we'll make sure we send those out as soon as they're updated with good answers. Craig is going to be monitoring the chat for us. Part of the reason he's going to monitor it is if there's, the same questions asked 6 times slightly differently, he'll just group it for us and we'll try to answer it all at one time, and just keep us a little more organized and keep us on time. He's been a great sort of ringmaster to our circus. I also wanted to, I don't know if we need introductions of the staff who are on board. You all know I'm Chuck Jackson. I think you know that. I'm the executive director. We can take maybe a minute for CMI staff just to say hello and wave. And then we'll dive into sort of our the decision-making process. So any CMI teachers, staff, here's your chance for stardom. Say something. Or just wave, that's fine.
Hi all, I'm Nina Abelson. I will be the inclusion teacher in the 5th and 6th grade math classes.
I'm Andy Charrier. I'm the Director of Technology. Welcome.
All right, let's dive in. Thank you guys for giving us some of your Saturday morning. We really appreciate it. Having 45 people here now tells me that this is an important meeting for us to have. And I'm really glad you're all here. I want to talk a little bit about the actual decision. You all understand we're going to be 100% virtual in the fall. We'll revisit that decision in October. When we sent out the announcement, there was a survey in there giving folks the opportunity to tell us if we're able to offer an in-person option, what their in-person choices would be, and rank them, just so we can get a sense of numbers. We have both surveyed you all back in June, and we also surveyed our staff to sort of get a sense of who's willing to come back and under what conditions they're willing to come back. Granted, that survey data is old. In the last month, a lot has happened. The Sun Belt states have exploded. We are having rapid rises, both in DC, but also around us. School system after school system surrounding us are going to all virtual as well. We were incredibly careful and thoughtful about making the decision we made last week. It was based on hours and hours, hundreds of hours of thought, meetings, talking to leaders in the city, DOH, Department of Health, Office of the State Superintendent, the Mayor's Office, the Deputy Mayor for Education, DCPS, as they are the largest school system in the district, and doctors. I called in personal favors from doctor friends. The president of the American Pediatric Association is a dear friend of mine, my family's, Dr. Lee Beers, so I had a chance to talk to her a lot about our decision-making processes. And where we landed is very succinctly put, we prioritize safety over education. It's really odd as an educator to say that. I never thought I'd have to pick one or the other, but I think, and I don't think anybody who works at CMI felt that way either, that they'd ever have to make this choice. But you can't teach the kids if they're sick or if they're getting sick or transmitting diseases or bringing it in. You can't teach kids if your staff is getting sick. So we've got to take care of our community first and foremost. And as we do that, one thing we talk a lot about here at CMI is community. We talk about equity. We approach this through an equity lens, and it's one of the reasons why it took us, in my opinion, a little bit longer to make this decision, because we wanted to weigh all of the family and community concerns. For example, essential workers, folks who can't go back to work unless they have childcare of some sort or another. How do you take care of them? Can you take care of them safely or not? And given the recent events, we felt like we couldn't necessarily take care of folks with a high enough degree of safety that we were comfortable bringing kids back into the building yet. We also made sure with equity to make sure that we know many of our families' children, they get 2 square meals a day at CMI, breakfast and lunch. So we made sure during the pandemic that everybody got that who needed it, regardless of salary, regardless of whether you're a part of free and reduced meal program, the farm program. We delivered probably close to 40,000 meals during the pandemic to families. We are going to ensure that for our families who are in the free and reduced meal program, that we continue that while we're virtual. And if there's a need for folks who aren't in the free and reduced meal program, farm, as folks like to call it, we will figure out what we can do to try to help them out too, or encourage them to join farm if they're out of work or whatever, to take care of those basic needs of safety, food, home, all those kind of things. We're also setting up emergency funds for staff. I know the CFA is doing some really great work around creating an emergency fund for families and figuring out how to support families who might need it. So if I call out the most positive thing that's come out of this is the community has rallied around itself and taken great, great care of itself. And so I'm really proud and pleased to see that. And I'm really happy to see all of you here today. When we surveyed you guys, your data, and we were one of the highest participating schools in the city, by the way. I think we were in the top 10. Our data mirrored the city data, which was roughly 48% wanted an in-person option. About 20% said, no way, I'm not going in under any circumstances. And about 30% said, I don't know, I'm scared. I need to understand this better before I make a choice. That was back in June. What I've heard qualitatively versus quantitatively, because the city hasn't done another survey, but I've heard a lot of feedback where the undecideds have become much more decided towards, I'm not comfortable going back yet. And given the massive increases that we're seeing around us, I understand that. We also surveyed our staff to see under what conditions they were willing to come back. And the numbers were similar. 100% of the staff said, I want to be there. I miss the kids. I would do anything to be able to be with the children right now, but ... And those dots were, some said, I'll do whatever the school says because I trust the school. Some said, I live with high-risk individuals, or I'm a high-risk individual, so I'm not comfortable going back until there's a vaccine or a higher degree or lower degree of risk, higher degree of certainty. And then there was a big chunk of undecided folks too. So, sorry, my text is going off. One of the reasons we surveyed our staff was to make sure we'd even have kids or staff to teach kids and to move people around the hallways and all that if we offer the in-person option. Since we've decided to go all virtual, the feedback's been very positive, both from staff and from families, where they've said, thank you for being concerned about our safety. I know not everybody's gonna be happy with that decision. I know it's an inconvenience for a lot of people. It's an inconvenience for me of 3 kids at home. Virtual education did not work well for one of my sons at all. The other 2 seem to handle it pretty well. But we are going to do everything we can to make our virtual program better than it was in the spring when we shut down. Remember, as Nyamka will say in a few minutes, we only had a week to figure out how to take 500 plus kids and educate them virtually. And the staff did a brilliant job, but what they've done is they spent the last 3 weeks, we closed 3 weeks early last year, spent those 3 weeks looking at what worked, what didn't work. And Nyamka will talk more about that in a minute. I think that's probably all I want to say. I want to turn it over to Nyamka so she can give us a high level sense of what virtual learning is going to look like and how we got to where we are right now on the academic front and how we're going to, run the program. And then I'm sure she'll ask Abby and Lorna to speak up too about the specifics for lower school and middle school. Okay, and if Amit is on the call, she can talk about special ed. If she's not, then I think both Nyamka and I can probably speak a little bit about it because we've been involved in a lot of that. And before I kick this over to Nyamka, I need to mention one thing. The reason I'm very confident in the decision is the folks who are on this call with you right now have all been leading the discussions with the city. Nyamka has been leading how to work with your staff and how to keep your staff culture strong for the city and the working groups. Amita, along with the Special Ed Collaborative, has been teaching every school, including DCPS, about compliance and RTI and student support teams and how to do virtual service provision, because in fact, it worked pretty well for some kids. And Heather Hesslink, because as you all know, we were planning on trying to do an in-person thing, but just recently led a session at OSSI on what you should do for a facility to make your facility as clean and as safe as possible. She also led one on the National School Lunch Program based on our ability to get food to the families that needed it. So you've got a group of people here who have done nothing but think about this since February and are in fact leading the thought process for the city. So I'm just humbled and honored to be working with this team. And with that, Nyamka, get us going.
Sure. Thanks, Chuck. We are so excited that you're here, and we're, like I said, we really want this to be an opportunity to share information with you. And as we get information, that's our main goal, to get it to you as accurately when we know what decisions are, and to provide space for you to ask any questions that you may have. And we understand there's going to be a ton of questions, and we are here to answer your questions. So please feel free to reach out to us. Just to give you an overview of what this process has been since the school closure, we really looked at the program and, we're reflecting on what are the things that went really well with distance learning, what are the things that we need to make updates and corrections around. So we kind of set forth these kind of parameters as guidelines as we've kind of been doing this planning over the past few months. We really want to ensure that CMI students have regular touch points with teachers and other school staff, and not only from an academic basis, but also just making sure that basic needs are met. Also inquiring about their social emotional well-being, and realizing that we've all gone through this very traumatic experience, not only with COVID, but also with like the racial inequalities that have kind of been risen to the forefront. So really thinking through all those things as we kind of thought through our planning. We also want to ensure that students have regular touch points with their classmates and continue to build community. That's something that's so special and so important about CMI. And although we're moving to this virtual posture, we want to ensure that that continues, and we're putting things in place so that that happens within the educational plan. We also realize that it's not going to be school as usual. We're not taking what we did in the classroom and kind of putting it on this virtual front. We're trying to figure out how do we create learning, meaningful educational things that really target where students are. And we want these opportunities to be meaningful. And so, in the classroom, it may look a certain way. We've realized that we've had to make updates and changes to ensure that students are engaged and wanting to come to these learning opportunities. And we also just want to ensure and provide flexibility. We realize that families have a variety of capacity to be able to support their students during the day. So how do we create a schedule that takes that into consideration while also ensuring that we're meeting the needs of the student and providing them with the educational learning that they deserve? So what I'd like to do now is that's the high level. These are the guiding kind of principles that we thought about as we kind of work to design the educational plan for students. And I'm going to turn it over to Abby and then to Lorna to kind of give more specifics about what that's going to look like in the lower school and then also for the middle school.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. So I'm going to divide mine up into early childhood, which is preschool and pre-K, and then separately do K-4 because they're different styles of programming. For preschool and pre-K, there will be a live morning meeting each day. There will be live and recorded learning centers each day, and those will be offered for 6 different areas. Those will be music and movement, read aloud, science, literacy, math, and art. We're going to suggest selecting about 3 centers a day, but that's optional and flexible according to your family's needs. And then there will also be live social groups, which will be teacher facilitated games or activities that really focus on collaboration online, which will be a little tricky with young kids, but we are really targeting our thinking around the social emotional needs of kids in this situation as well. And so that's something we're adding this year. And then there will also be enrichment classes offered 4 times a week, and those are the same as usual: art, PE, Spanish, and Mandarin. So that's a brief overview of the ECE program. And one thing I forgot to say is that the learning centers will be offered both live and recorded, so that if, for example, your child learns better in the afternoon, or that's easier timing with your work schedule or something like that, they can watch the recordings later and do it on your own time. For K through 4, there will also be morning meeting live on Zoom every day. There will also be live social groups. The difference is primarily in the academics. There will be 3 different academic small groups that will be 2 to 3 times a week each, depending on the subject area. Those will be a time for small groups of students to meet with teachers. And those will be for IPC, math, and literacy throughout the week. And then in addition, there will also be recorded lessons with independent assignments. And so the small groups will be a time to sort of review those assignments, collaborate on them as needed, ask questions, get feedback, that more sort of like closer collaboration with the teacher during that time. And then there will also be enrichment classes, same ones I mentioned. And then one thing that we're adding is live share time, and that will be once to twice a week per subject for lots of kids to get together to show off their work and really sort of create a sense of an audience and hopefully keep them motivated by seeing their friends, seeing what their friends are doing at home and the type of projects and work they're engaging in.
So hi everybody, I'm Lorna Dill, director of the middle school, and I'd like to just say hi to the families that I don't know of the 5th graders that are rising 5th graders. Our classes in the middle school will start at 9 o'clock each day, and that will be first period, followed by advisory. And during advisory, students have an opportunity to learn new skills around conscious discipline, which is our adaptive program to help them with their social emotional learning and well-being, and also have opportunity to build a community. There will be frequent breaks in the classes. Classes will probably be about 45 minutes, and with a 15-minute break in between each class. Since we will be on Zoom, that will give the students opportunity to take a break, get some water, have a snack, use the bathroom or whatever, and then join the next class. Lunch will be kind of a community building time. The Zoom class will be open for students to have lunch together, to talk. It will be facilitated by a teacher. The students will have opportunity to see their friends and build community. There will be time at the end of the day for students to finish or complete work or ask questions from teachers, get information, have small groups with teachers, one-on-one, and also the teachers will make themselves available to the parents for any questions or for giving suggestions for making sure the students understand the content. E-classes will be given on Wednesday, and we're shooting for a opportunity for the students to have live sessions for Mandarin, Spanish, art, music, and PE, along with some recorded sessions, but also it's another opportunity for students to get to know each other or to build community and to be able to share in those lessons. We also, I wanted to just note that we are looking specifically at making sure that our middle school students are taken care of with their social needs, because we know that that's a time for students to build those particular skills, and we don't want to just ignore it. So bear with us as we meet the needs educationally and socially. Thank you.
All right, thank you. What I'd like to do is turn it over to Craig, who's going to field us through the questions.
Sure, thanks, Nyamka. I've tried to group them. Let's stick for now kind of with some instructional nuts and bolts around how many hours of screen time do we anticipate will be part of the differing learning approaches?
What we're planning to do is, based on Abby and Lorna kind of give me an overview of kind of what the schedule looks like. We're spending the next week or so putting together what that's going to look like, so we can actually give you concrete information around what that looks like. And that's going to be based on information we're collecting from a lot of different agencies around, you know, from like what doctors are saying, and also what we know is best for students. We absolutely honor and understand that we don't want students in front of devices for long periods of time. But we also want to realize that, you know, this is our opportunity to connect with them. And how do we make those times that we are connecting with them most meaningful? What are things that we can do in those times versus what are things that they can do not on a device? So we're putting together a schedule so you'll have clear guidelines on exactly what that looks like. But we're considering all of that, what's developmentally appropriate for students, and also taking into consideration what are the things that we really need to have a teacher in front of a student leading. Great,
thanks, Nyamka. If you can kind of follow up with one of the questions was around the number of hours of a school day, and an opinion that we should have the same hours as in person, but maybe talk to how we approached structuring the length of what we would consider the school day.
Sure. Just in this time, I know myself, and I can imagine a lot of people on this call have sat in on many Zoom meetings, and a Zoom meeting is not the same as an in-person meeting. I think we can all acknowledge that. And it is very tiring, even for an adult, to sit in an hour meeting and actually have that focus, but to have that throughout the day is not a realistic or reasonable expectation for a child to have. And so what we're doing is thinking about how do we break up their day and provide them meaningful opportunities in a way that's developmentally appropriate and not having them in front of a screen all day. Part of the program that Abby and Lorna laid out, there will be opportunities for students to do some kind of work on their own, and then they come back and share what they've done. We don't need them sitting in front of a computer to do that. That's something that they can think through and bring back. And the teachers will also be having office hours where they can answer questions that students may be having that time, but it doesn't have to be direct contact in front of a screen for 8 hours, because we do not feel that that's developmentally appropriate for any of our students.
Okay, thanks. And let's keep going with the Nyamka Hit Parade, our approach to testing and how we're going to baseline or assess.
Absolutely. So we are going to continue with assessments. We are working through exactly what that looks like. One thing that our takeaway from the fall is that, you know, when we did the MAP testing, we did not do a good job of training parents around what that looks like, how to do that. Our teachers, we provide lots of training for them, what to look for. If a student is, you know, getting stuck, we don't expect a student to be sitting in front of a computer for long periods of time with being frustrated. We allow them to take a break. So any sort of assessments or things that we plan to have students do, we will provide training to teachers, to parents around what to look for, what are those things look like. But we will be doing baseline data, not probably like the first or second week of school, because we're going to really be focused on community building and getting back to like just checking in, how are you doing? But we will be doing assessments so that teachers can really program and ensure that they're meeting students where they are in those small groups. So yes, we will be doing testing, and any sort of standardized, formal assessment that we will be doing, we will be sharing with families what those assessments are, what are the kind of expectations, what to look for, when do you just stop a student if you see frustration happening, because that's not going to yield the best results. So all of that information we will be sharing with families.
Great, let's shift gears a little bit.
One more thing on testing, just citywide, the superintendent has decided we will still take the park in the spring. The feeling is they need some touch points, some data to understand where kids stand and whether there's been loss, gain, if gains have been stagnant. So we will be taking the park again for those grades that are impacted by it.
Great, thanks, Chuck. Let's give Amita a chance. Amita, if you can talk to quickly how we're approaching special education and IEPs and service delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the spring, based on sort of the ever-changing environment, we implemented IEPs to the greatest extent possible to ensure FAPE, and made related services the foundation of our work. And so in that same sort of vein, we plan to do the same, is make sure that the related services continue to be the foundation, and we'll layer on special education services from an instructional standpoint on top of that, in addition to making sure that students who have special education services are getting those supports both outside of the classroom as well as in any sort of small group and whole group instructional experiences.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Amita. There was a question around attendance. We're still awaiting guidance from OSSI on how exactly attendance will be taken. We will be required to do that and to ensure students are engaged in learning, but the exact specifics are still to be determined. So we'll certainly be in touch with what attendance is going to mean once we get a definition from the state superintendent's office and clarity on that. And then also that relates to Nyamka, if you want to pick up how we will kind of track assignments or what the methodology will be around ensuring students are engaged and completing the work.
Sure. So one of our takeaways from the distance learning that occurred in the spring is that we had a grade level that piloted Seesaw. And that was our 3rd grade, and we heard great success with that. And so that's a practice that we're going to be using school-wide. We provided training to our staff, and we'll also be providing training to our teachers around what that looks like. That's a great way to submit work and to have communication so that you see what your students are doing. And then also the teachers can provide feedback in more responsive feedback to students in that platform. So we will be providing training for families around how to engage with that. And also, just like we teach students how to like wash their hands, how to add and subtract, we will be working with students to kind of teach them how to work in the system in the Seesaw system.
Great, thanks, Nyamka. And then maybe touch on if how we're going to be grading or evaluating students, if we're going to see any shifts in that, or if it'll still follow our normal scale that we've been using.
We're trying to keep that as consistent as possible, but we will provide any update or guidance because we want to ensure that, being in person, we have more touch points with families. And realize that in this digital space, it's a little bit different. We want to ensure that families have an idea of where students are performing. So we're trying to figure out, are there additional ways that we can provide that information to families? So that's to be determined, but it will likely look similar, but we want to ensure that families have some idea of how students are performing on a more regular basis.
Great, thanks. Let's, Abby, if you can quickly, we had a question, and I think you touched on it, but maybe really summarize again the K-4 sample schedule, and if there'll be any for both you and Lorna, any live classes broadcast.
Sure. So there are going to be brief daily lessons recorded along with independent tasks. And so those you can access at your convenience, the best time for learning, the best time according to your work schedule, things like that. In addition to that, though, this year, all grades are going to be doing live small groups, and those will be for literacy, math, and IPC. And so those will be a time to follow up with any questions on those independent tasks. It will also be a time for teachers to focus on meeting more individual or small group needs. And then in addition to that, there will be enlightenment classes and live social groups. That's it. Go ahead, Lorna.
So for middle school, all of the classes will be live on Zoom. Right now, we're trying to decide whether students have an AA schedule or BB schedule. The AA schedule will be Monday, Tuesday with 3 days of remote learning or independent work outside of the Wednesday, which is the Enlightenment Day, where it's art, music, PE, and then the languages, which Abby mentioned is either Mandarin or Spanish for middle school. And then the BB schedule will be Thursday, Friday, but also Monday, Tuesday would be those remote learning days or independent learning days where the students can work on independent work. I think that most of the middle school touch points with the teachers will be frequent. A lot of time will be spent with teachers with office hours, small groups. We do have inclusion teachers in math and ELA. So there's 2 teachers. So we will have a lot of touch points with the students.
Great. Thanks, Lorna.
Craig, I remembered what I wanted to say before. The other addition for lower school this year is that all grades will have live office hours for those same subject areas, IPC, math, and literacy each day.
Great, thanks. And we'll stick with 1 or 2 more kind of these logistical questions, then I'll move on to tech and then some social, emotional, and in-person opportunity questions. But Abby, you started to touch on it. What are going to be the opportunities for parents to check in with teachers on a regular basis?
We are figuring out what the scheduled version of that will look like, but then we're also dividing things up for virtual instruction differently this year than we did last year. And so that will allow more in-person contact for subject-specific instruction. Same 3 groups for K-4, literacy, IPC, and math. And then for ECE, those would be more based on the centers.
Thanks. And Lorna, you want to add how you and your team will stay in touch with parents?
So every day from 2 to 2:45 right now, I think on the schedule, it looks like it's independent work time for students. So that's an opportunity every day for the parents to send emails, the teachers to get in touch with the parents regarding work. Like we said, office hours, small group, independent work with the teachers. And then also Wednesdays, we will be doing PD. But there will be opportunities on every Wednesday, sort of like a chunk of time for parent-teacher interactions, as well as for teachers to check the students' emails and get back to the students.
Great, thanks, Lorna. We've had 1 or 2 inquiries about how much time parents should plan or how much time will be needed of their direct interaction kind of throughout a learning day, which I know is a difficult question specifically based on, that goes to age and where a student is in their learning. So maybe if you want to take a little bit of stab at it, Abby, Lorna, and maybe even Amita jump in with the expectations around kids with IEPs or special needs.
So
Sure.
For middle, can I go first, Abby, because it's really quick?
Yep.
For middle school, right now we counted 4.5 hours per day on of screen time, and hopefully we can kind of vary that based on students doing their work and taking the frequent breaks. So 4.5 hours per day.
For lower school, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how much they're on, and it will vary a little bit day to day based on what small groups they have that day. I would say it's probably a rough estimate is around 4 hours online as well. The main thing I would say is that we are with one-to-one devices this year, and with preschool through 2nd grade having iPads, we are really trying to be deliberate about what platforms we use and minimize the need to access a lot of platforms. And so we're hoping that will be allow for more self-sufficiency with our students in terms of not requiring so much help throughout the day. And then also by the recording sessions, you guys, if your child is needing a lot of support with those things, it can be done according to your schedule.
Thanks. Amita, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say that from a service delivery perspective, we'll be implementing related services pretty much to the level that are prescribed on an IEP, and then making sure that our special education services that are focused on instruction layer into the small group general education experience and whole group experience, and then adding on some sessions that will be able to focus specifically on IEP goals and growth.
Great, thanks. Let's touch quickly on tech, then we'll move on to kind of social, emotional, and in-person opportunities. Abby started to touch on it. I'll give a little information, then ask Andy to chime in. From a tech standpoint, as has been said, we are going one-to-one on devices. So pre-K 3 through 2nd grade will be issued iPads second through sixth will have tablets, and seventh and eighth will receive Chromebooks. I'll let Andy talk a little bit about the distribution approach to that as well. Andy, if then you can also quickly touch on kind of the transition, if you will, from iReady to more Seesaw and less Google Classroom.
Oh, sure. Okay. Craig told you about the devices. Our plan for distribution is that we'll get everything organized in the Great Hall, put a label on them, and then put them in backpacks along with the other supplies kids will need to get the school year started, so that when you walk out, you'll just have one bag, and if everything works out right, it'll have everything you need to have school at home. So that's that. My guess is that's going to be ready a lot closer to the actual start day of school. We ordered all of this equipment, but like every other school, I saw that Prince George's County was ordering 45,000 Chromebooks. So our little order of 180, I hope our order is ahead of theirs. Anyhow, so that's our plan for getting technology to you. And then we'll have a system to come pick it up. Haven't thought that through all the way, but anyhow, we'll have you come and get it all. And then Craig mentioned Seesaw. I think that was your question, right? Oh, yeah, and moving away. Yeah, we had really good experience. I think Nyamka said this at the start. We had a really good experience with Seesaw, and I'm a longtime user of Seesaw, and we're going to kind of standardize on that as a platform for just the basic kind of communicating lessons, having kids do work interactively, share their work, comment on each other's work. So it really fits for our school. So that's kind of the long and short of it.
And then Andy, is there something we might be able to do to help families kind of get familiar with Seesaw or help educate them a little bit?
Yeah, we're going to have, so this was suggested at the meeting on Wednesday, there's going to be Andy's guide for parents, Andy's survival guide for parents on Seesaw, and I'll get that recorded, and we'll get you familiar with that so you don't feel like you're in the dark.
Great. Thanks. And one more for Andy. There was a question about, I didn't quite get it, maybe you'll know a little more, about allowing less restrictive emails between middle school and teachers and staff for better communication.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at that. I saw that question too. The short answer is we'll take a look at that. For context, we just can't have fifth graders blasting emails to their favorite DJ or whatever from a Creative Minds email account. And so, or better yet, to have the DJ emailing fifth graders. I think that's actually what I'm more worried about. So I saw that comment. I think it's a good point, and we'll see what we can do about that.
Great, thanks. And then one additional thing is, if there are families that are in need of internet connectivity, we'll continue to ask about that and provide at no cost to the families hotspots. So if there are anyone that does need internet connectivity, we will assist with that. That covers tech pretty well. Let's kind of shift to a couple questions that were there on social, emotional, and in-person opportunities. The one, maybe let's tackle this one first, and I'll hand it over to Chuck in a minute. That's been one of the more popular questions on these sessions that we've held, are around pods and kind of group learning outside of the school or school day. So I'll hand it over to Chuck to talk a bit about CMI's position on pods.
Okay, I'm unmuted, good. Yeah, I don't know if you've all read the Washington Post. I actually read the newspaper front to back every single day on paper instead of an electronic device because I'm old school. But recently there's an article about pods and families trying to come together and create pods for learning. There's positives and negatives to it. As I mentioned at the start, we've spent a lot of time looking at how CMI is going to run through an equity lens. And one of the biggest concerns about pods is only certain people are able to do it. To hire a teacher to come in and bring groups together, which is, I think, one thing that this pandemic has laid bare are the immense inequities we see in our city. We gave away I think over 100 devices. We've served over 40,000 meals. Other schools, frankly, lost children because of virtual. They just fell out of touch. There's big equity concerns about this. There's people who don't have access to internet, those kind of things. There are families who can't afford to, both parents or mom or grandma or whomever, the guardian needs to go to work and can't have a pod in their house. So there's all those issues. The issue I also want to remind anybody who's considering doing this is the health concerns. The health concerns around pods are enhanced, let's be honest. Like, you're not going to be taking temperatures every single day. You're not going to be asking the same 3 questions. We've developed an app for when we come back in person where families take the temperature, and we don't let a kid in unless they swear that the kid hasn't been in contact with anybody, blah, 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 blah. All the required health questions that are coming out of the Department of Health and the CDC. The risk you would run in setting up a pod, again, it's your choice, but is you're going to have 5, 6 kids who you may have different health protocols in their own house or whatever. You're going to potentially have small blooms. In fact, there have been blooms in areas where daycare centers have been closed, where communities come together to take care of kids, and suddenly you see a bloom because someone goes home and they may be symptomatic, but they are a carrier. And the other thing that I really want to caution people about is the science is changing weekly. 2 weeks ago, it was said the little ones don't get it and they don't transfer it. Well, guess what? Last week, another research study came out, said they are the super carriers and super transmitters. Next week, it's probably going to be different. My point is, you're dealing with health here. It's 140,000 people have died. So it is up to you to make your own decisions about that. Yes, I can understand you cross the street and get hit by a car. I appreciate that. Struck by lightning, whatever. But we're not going to facilitate increasing the risk for our families. So we're not going to staff pods. We're not going to help set them up. If you all want to do it on your own, you're welcome to. But again, I caution you about doing that. I can't imagine there's a single person on this call whose family or friends haven't been touched by this pandemic. I don't know if I mentioned in this call, but in the last call, I know I shared that I lost a family member to COVID-19. He was 25. So someone wasn't wearing a mask, guess what? So I just want everybody to be careful. Granted, it was in New York, and it was when New York was the hottest part of the COVID crisis, but understand it's all about how you impact other people around you too. So when it comes to pods, the equity concerns are big for me, and the health concerns are big for me. But again, you all have the choice. You can do it if you'd like, but I don't think the school is going to set them up for you. We're not going to staff them for you.
Great. Thanks, Chuck. And if you can kind of touch on a bit, kind of a parallel to getting together in person was potential use of the CMI play space.
Yeah, that's been blowing up on the listserv, I hear. And I appreciate the desire to do it, of course. But I want everybody to understand we are on AFRH's campus. AFRH makes the rules. They will allow people into the buildings if they have an appointment and if they pass a health screening, those kind of things. So anytime our contractors want to come in, we have to tell them who the contractors are. Lincoln Cottage, and I think Erin Mass is on the call, so she can speak to the details, but I know they've reopened. But my understanding is it's by appointment only, it's all outside, and it's in very, very small groups and very supervised, and masks always. We are not maintaining the playground right now. What that means is we're not out there, we're not gonna sanitize it, we're not pulling the weeds, we're not putting down new wood chips. We are focused on making sure we get virtual right in the fall so your kids can keep learning. That's our #1 priority at the moment. If you want to try to come in, you're welcome to. Again, this is personal choice, personal preference. It's the same answer to the pods. I will tell you, yesterday I was leaving and the guard stopped 2 joggers who were trying to come in and just jog around the campus. They didn't have an appointment at Lincoln Cottage. They didn't have a reason to be in any of the buildings. They stopped them because they're not allowing people on. Now, if you can get past them, I'm not suggesting anybody try to break the rules, but they're the ones that are setting those rules. Understand, if you're on campus, the one rule I know they enforce, and I see them do this on a regular basis, they do it with the construction people who are on campus right now with us, you have to have a mask on. at all times. They will not let you through the gate unless you have a mask on. So, and if they catch you on campus without a mask, they're going to escort you out. So I will leave it to your all's best judgment, but understand if you use it, it will be kind of at your own risk because we are not cleaning it, we're not controlling it, and frankly, I'm discouraging it as a means to get people together.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. Let's shift back a little bit, Nyamka, kind of, or Abby, one of you two, on how we're planning to onboard pre-K3 students and then how we're approaching assignment of any small groups.
Sure. So for pre-K3 students, all new students throughout the school, we're really emphasizing social emotional skills in 2 ways. Those will be the social groups and morning meeting. Morning meeting will be sort of like a proactive teaching of skills and practicing of skills together in a group, in a big group. And then social groups will be more game oriented, they'll be more fun, and just sort of try to really foster collaboration and conversation and socialization among kids. Sorry, Craig, what was the second part of that?
So it was around how we would be assigning small groups.
Oh yeah, that we're primarily going to rely on last year's teachers for pre-K3. We'll probably use a lot of the information we get through the family meetings that we will be doing in the first couple weeks. And then we'll be assigning those for pre-K3 after those meetings. For other grades, we'll be relying on information. We really want them to have some buddies in their groups, both for academics and social groups. But then also for the academic groups, we'll be taking their academic needs and strengths into account as well.
Great, thanks, Abby. I'll chime in with 1 or 2 quick ones. There was a question on if we had to let any staff go. And the immediate answer is no, we have not. We were very well positioned this year, and just about all of the staff was returning. So there are very few new staff members coming into the building this year. And we were also able to continue to pay all staff through last year from March through the end of the year, as well as pay our ECD staff. Even though we weren't delivering ECD services, we did continue to pay ECD staff that would normally be participating in that or assisting with that, as that was a key part of income for them. So we were able to continue that, as well as all of our hourly employees. We managed to work with our cleaning company to ensure our cleaning crew was able to come in and have work and get paid. So those were all very high priorities for us as far as making sure folks get paid. And the intent is still the same for this year. Certainly we do not have to let any folks go. We're lucky to be in a financial position where we do not have to do that, unlike a number of schools, and that we will be able to retain all of our hourly workers. Touching on what aftercare will look like if we are able to offer it, that's still to be determined. We're figuring out what may make sense and what there may be interest in, to be honest, and how that could work. So we will keep thinking through that and let folks know as we approach the start of the school year what we may be able to offer from that standpoint. Quickly on meals as well, our meal program will continue for free and reduced meal eligible families at no cost when we start virtually. So we will continue to provide food to those that most need it, as well as undertake a concentrated effort from Heather and her team to reach out to folks and really see if we're missing families that are eligible or potentially eligible for free and reduced meals, to make sure they get into the program so that we can ensure we are taking care of them and getting food to those that most need it. So that's on the meals program. I saw a nice offer from Thomas, Andy, to jump in and help with Seesaw training. Thank you, Thomas. We always appreciate your assistance with that. And I'm skimming to see if there are any big topics that I missed. If I did, please forgive me and add it back into the chat if you feel we haven't answered your questions as we're approaching the noon hour, which is when we're scheduled to end. Okay, I'm not seeing anything kind of trickle in. If you do have something that pops up, we will get you a response after this session. But for now, I'll hand it back over to Chuck and Nyamka to kind of wrap us up and take us home. Oh, sorry. There a list of teachers. Nyamka, do you want to kind of tackle how we would kind of let folks know who the teachers will be?
Sure. We are going to send a list, but also we're hoping to send a video too. So you can not only see their names, but also see their faces and kind of, get to know them. They may tell you one thing about them that they like, or just to, help build that community. So we will be getting those to you shortly. And was that it?
Yep. And let me put a plug in. Thanks, Tamar, for adding that about the CFA's GoFundMe campaign that is also intended to help our families that need assistance. If you do have the link handy tomorrow, if you could drop that into the chat, that would be appreciated. But thank you so much to the CFA for being our partner in helping to ensure our whole community is taken care of. And I think with that, we've covered it all. So yeah, Chuck, over to you.
So thank you all. I can't tell you how much gratitude I feel knowing that you're all here. I want to thank you for trusting us with your most priceless and precious possessions, your beautiful children. We miss them so much. I got to tell you, our staff misses them so much. So real briefly on reopening, because I don't know if we addressed this early on, we will watch the science. We will use science to make our decision. We will make sure it's safe, or as safe as possible, before we bring kids back. We are looking at all sorts of different configurations on when we bring kids back, what groups of kids we bring back first. So we will keep you posted as those plans solidify. As we promised in the email we sent out, October will be the date when we're going to be making some additional hard decisions. We expect to have a better idea of where things are headed in the community by then. And so thank you all very much again. And if you have any questions, we're here. You can actually call the school. We're monitoring the phones, believe it or not. Craig and I are often in the building. So we're around and we're happy to answer those questions. We can't have everybody in the building right now because the floors are all torn up and the lobby is under construction. So that'll look beautiful when we are able to have you all back in. Maybe we'll do a video tour or something. But I do want to thank you all so much. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We promise we'll be transparent. We will share information as it is real and as it is available. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.